Good morning. Welcome to our webinar this morning. I'm very happy that you can join us. So my name is Mei Lin. I'm the CFO of Manulife Cambodia. I'm also a member of AmCham's Women's Committee. Personally, I'm very passionate about gender diversity because I'm a mother. But also as a CFO, gender diversity makes financial sense because at least for most companies in the world, 50% of our customers are women. So women know about women, and we should know better in terms of what our women customers want in terms of products and services. So in theory, then we should have a 50% of management team that are women. This helps us align with our customers and our strategy. But in reality, that's not the case. So in the next hour, we're going to be listening from a panel of global leaders to discuss how their companies and their industries are working towards creating greater diversities and an inclusive environment where there are women, women employees and managers can thrive. So our panelists will be Ms. Toyin Opey. Toyin is the head of inclusion and diversity for Visa Asia Pacific. Next, we have Ms. Priya Panjaka. Priya is the area director of human resource for Marriott International for Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Myanmar. Lastly, we have Mr. Sudash Tabasanabati. Sudash is the head of diversity, equality, and inclusion from Manulife Asia. Finally, we have our moderator today is Ms. Ryeong Cham, head of corporate affairs from Smart Cambodia. I'm really excited to hear what they got to say about this topic. So let's get this started. Ryeong, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mei Lin, for the very meaningful open remarks. And this is very inspiring for us to come together to discuss about women inclusions and equality in workplace. So I am Sray Yun, head of corporate affairs at Smart Axiata. I am actually working on a lot of this matter at Smart. So we actually do a lot of ESG programs, and as May mentioned earlier, we actually try to include women in the leadership roles. And currently, we achieve more than 30% of the women in the leadership role, but that's not enough. As she mentioned, there's still more that we need to do because it makes a lot of business sense and also community sense how we can support women to be up there and support us to grow as a unity. So, and it's my pleasure to be here as your moderator today, and I'm excited to meet the three leaders from different companies and also from different industries. We would love to hear more from all of them and from what they could share to us as an insight that we can actually use to implement in Cambodia. So first, I would like to invite Sudash to briefly share with us your experience and your profile about what you've done in this area.
Good morning, and hello everyone, and thanks so much for the invite for this wonderful occasion and event. So I'm Sudash. I'm currently the head of diversity, equity, and inclusion for Manulife Asia. Been doing this gig for almost 3 years now. A bit about myself: I'm an engineer by education, and I somehow stumbled upon different roles. I've been doing manufacturing, technology, ops, innovations, healthcare, and eventually moving on to inclusion. The last 3 years with Manulife, and I think this is the best career choice I've made so far because it is making everyone's day better and helping someone every single day, and that's me.
That's great. Great, thank you. I would like to also invite Toyin to briefly share about your experience in this area as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me, and so great to be on the panel with my fellow panelists here. So my name is Toyin Ope. I lead inclusion and diversity at Visa in Asia Pacific. I've been at Visa for the last 2 years doing this role. My role covers 18 different countries across the Asia Pacific region. Prior to joining Visa, I did work in inclusion and diversity more in the energy industry, and I was in that industry for about 14 years. Similar to Sudesh, my career started out in finance. And then I moved into corporate strategy, and then I got into commercial projects and negotiations. And during that point, I realized that there was an opportunity for somebody really to roll up their sleeves and start working on inclusion and diversity, because there is a bonus there for organizations that is untapped. And so roughly about 10 years ago, I came into the inclusion and diversity space. And similar to Sudesh, it's been the best decision that I could have made for my career as well.
Wow. Wow, that's great. I'm happy to hear this. Maybe that will be a journey, my next journey, further pursuing in this. Very inspiring. But last but not least, I would like to invite Priya to share your background in terms of your expertise as well.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone, and it's really an honor to be a part of this panel discussion about a topic that I'm really passionate about. My name is Priya, and I'm currently the Area Director of HR for Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Myanmar at Marriott. Prior to rejoining Marriott, I've been associated with Marriott nearly 10 years off and on. I used to work for Qatar Airways in Doha, and I worked with them for about 6 years. But I started my career in the year 2001, and my first job was in the armed forces. So I was a commissioned officer in the Indian Army for about 6 years, after which I left and I did my MBA and then moved over to HR. And although my role is not fully focused or a specialized role just for diversity, in my current role, I do run a lot of initiatives that are about diversity, because Marriott as a company is really committed to diversity and inclusion. And thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm looking forward to learning from all of our panelists that we have here. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you for all the 3 panelists that share about your great backgrounds and also very inspiring. One thing that I noticed in common is we all love what we're doing. So that's something that you shared with me. I think this is something that we should carry on as a passion toward work and toward society as well. So to begin with, I would like to actually start with a very broader overview about how actually we as a company should look at gender equality, or how a company should approach gender equality. This question would address to all of the panelists. So please. Maybe start with Sudesh, or...
Yeah. Thanks, Ray. Gender equality aside, we know the entire global population is already kind of half-half. We are already at parity between women and men. And who are we to decide who chooses to become a leader one day? Why must there be more men or more whatever leadership positions when the whole world is split in two? I think from that mindset already kind of tells you that it is important to consider that everybody has a voice at the table. And it is not a select few who decide who gets the opportunity to be at the top. Women have been trying for hundreds of years to have a seat at the table. And I think they've come really far and wide from where it was a long time ago. But there's so much more to do. We have now boards and regulators are mandating things across the world now, in the UK, in the US, and now even in Hong Kong. They're mandating the need for women to be on the boards. So do we need to put pressure and KPI on organizations to make change happen? Why can't you do it naturally? Because it is an opportunity. You're missing out on skills and talent. So as an organization, of course, we do have our representation goals for women at leadership globally. So for VP and above, we have 37% and above, and for AVP and above is 43% global aspirational targets. And we are moving towards parity in another couple of years. So it is on everyone's KPI and agenda that we need to achieve these targets at the leadership level. So everybody is kept on toes. If you don't achieve it, you don't get your bonus, basically, right? So it is a performance measure that we are ensuring everyone achieves to do. Many functions and many markets across Asia have far achieved that. Like in Indonesia now, we are at close to 60% of women leadership at the senior level. Hong Kong is also close to 60%. And the numbers are similar across the region as well. So if you put your mind to it, you can actually do it because you bring a new flavor to the table. And like I said, the world is split into half to begin with. So it is not for your choice to choose who sits at the table.
Oh, that's great. The reason why I think I chose Sudesh for the first place because he's a man in this room. So I would love to hear more about from men's perspective on this matter. So I would love to hear more from Priya as well, and then maybe we'll pass to Yin on this matter.
Thank you. So, just to add on to what Sudesh said, so I'll talk about the hospitality industry. So post-COVID, the landscape has changed and the war for talent is quite real, We want to attract talents, that are diverse. It can be from any gender, it can be from any age, any kind of orientation, any race. And in Marriott, not from now, but from years ago when diversity really wasn't the topic that was getting discussed a lot. It was a very big part of how Marriott did business because we truly believe, and the top leadership believes, that women and diversity is imperative to the success of Marriott. Also because we are a global company and we are present in so many, across the globe we are present, And if you look at the numbers that we have, it's led from the top. So yes, like Sudesh said, it's good to have KPIs, that get measured. But I think it's also good to get that whole why piece right, to make a business case out of it. So, and it starts from the top. So if you look at Marriott, 50% of our senior global leadership is diverse. And this includes the board of directors. More than 50% of the top US leadership is diverse. And when you come down, to the levels of general managers and executive committees based at hotels, yes, it can differ a lot, going from one country to another country. It can, if you go towards the West, the numbers might look very different to what probably they look in Southeast Asia or this part of the world. But we are very committed to having policies, and we do have policies that are very inclusive, that cater to all genders and everybody. It doesn't matter where you come from, and what your personal life is like, whether you're single, whether you're married, whether you are XYZ generation, or whatever race you come to. Our policy or our vision is very much to make anyone that joins Marriott to feel belonged. So you could be anyone, but you must feel like this is your home, and you will get the opportunity to be whoever you want to be, and the company will help you get there. So, it's a very structured way of addressing it, which everyone in the company has to understand. So the first is to offer the opportunity. Everyone knows that there is the opportunity for you to get from place A to place B. The second thing is to have a community, to have sponsors, to have people, peers that make you feel belonged and welcome and respected, regardless of who you are, and just be yourself, just be yourself. We don't expect you to act a certain way. You can just be yourself. And the third thing is to have a purpose, so giving back to the community, which kind of makes sure that all the people, regardless of where they come from, they can get together and have a common purpose. So, that reflects a lot in giving back to the community. We have many different initiatives, Road to Give, working with many other NGOs. So that brings people together and gives people a chance to come together regardless of where you are. So that's very much at our core, I would say.
Thank you, Priya. And Toyin, could you share from your perspective?
Sure. So in my perspective, how organizations should approach gender inclusion and gender equity is really like how they would approach any other business imperative, right? Research shows us that companies that are more diverse are, that are more diverse, they innovate more. They're about 36% more on average more profitable, they are more likely to retain their employees and have very engaged employees. So it is a business imperative, right? But what I do want to mention at this point is that sometimes it's easy for us to over-index on that. Not everybody buys into that. You know, so you have to also highlight other areas like, you know, it is the right thing to do. And you engage, you know, part of your workforce that believes that it is the right thing for companies to do. And then also, is it an expectation of society, of the communities that we operate in, now of some of our shareholders, of employees, right? So really making sure that you're communicating the imperative and the why, like you would any other business case.
Yeah.
And then going on to identify, you know, the problem. So what is the source of the problem? I know sometimes we often jump into just doing what everybody else is doing to address an issue, but really taking time to diagnose your particular issue. Is it a retention issue? Is it an attraction issue? Is it promotion, development of your female leaders? And then looking at specific interventions to then address those issues. I think that really helps to build a sense of collective responsibility. I don't believe that this work is something that should be done by one person, by HR, or by one department. I think once you are able to get everybody bought in, then everybody takes on collective responsibility to move it forward.
Oh, very great. So just a summary of what I've heard from all the panelists. So one thing for sure is the KPI that we need to set in order to make sure that our organization can achieve the goals. And the second one, if I get Priya right, it's more of the systematic addressing, systematic way to address this issue. So putting in all the diversity, so more than just females, or it's more of diversity and how we can cherish all the different backgrounds from different peoples, and then make them feel belong to the organization, so they can grow and be themselves, and it will benefit the company as well as the community. And the last part, which is very interesting from Toyin, that you mentioned about innovation, where people can come together and buy in the stakeholder to believe in it. So this linked me to the second questions, because inclusivity is very hard to achieve. It's never been a very easy mission for each organization. And what I catch from Toyin is you need to buy people in. So I would love to hear more from your experience in how you buy in people in your organization in different fields and in different industries. So I would like to address this to Priya first, and then we will follow by the others panelists.
Sure. So you know, I think one of the key things is to have women in leadership roles. So not necessarily, at least in the hospitality industry, that somebody will join you at a management level. You know, they start at the bottom. Somebody will join you. Most people join you at an associate level. So you could be in the front office or housekeeping or sales and marketing or whatever the case may be. So it's really important to have really good career development programs in place. And again, that includes everyone. But maybe because it's not a level playing field, maybe in most markets within Asia, there is a big gap there. You know, when you have women that join you at lower levels, there is a big opportunity there to develop them. So having those career development programs in place, so that no matter what level they come in, if they have the right attitude, at least in hospitality, you know, because we are not building, or we are not making rocket scientists here, you know, we are hoteliers. It's more about attitude, it's more about the warmth in your heart, understanding systems, understanding the business, profitability, that comes with time and as you grow up the ladder. But do you have adequate programs to get an associate to a supervisor level, to get a supervisor level to an assistant manager level, to get an assistant manager to a manager level, and then do you have programs to give them confidence and build those leadership skills that enables them or gives them the confidence to raise their hand and say, hey, you know, I think I can do this job. I can be an executive committee member, or I can move from one hotel to another hotel when it comes to brand, or I can move from one city to another city. So do you have that? Do you have role models that they can look up to and say, hey, you know, if she could do it, I could do it as well? Do you have access for them to listen to those success stories? Because that's what inspires people, you know. Do you have that? You know, do you have enough face time with these people that are joining you to meet with senior leaders who tell them, we believe in you, you can get there, I'm going to help you, and here are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different programs that you have. So how do you capitalize on the current women leaders to drive the success of such programs? And how do you capitalize on the male leadership as well? It doesn't have to be just women leading programs like this. It has to be senior leadership regardless of what gender, what background they come from. And also, giving them opportunity, I think, to network, to find mentors, to find, you don't connect with everyone, but when you're in a room, maybe there's a cocktail or, there's a fireside chat or there is a conference and you're away from your core workplace, you find people that you're naturally attracted to or you're connected to. And, you can find those sponsors who can, or those mentors who can guide you. So I think it's really important to have a very clear development program for everyone, and there has to be focus on diversity and including women there. So the more of those we have, the more confidence it'll build in women to raise their hands up. Because what I noticed, especially in this part of the world, and this is my first time in Southeast Asia, I've just been in the role for 6 months, but just my initial sentiments, I talk more about Thailand because that's where I have the most properties. Sometimes you can see in a female upcoming leader, wow, she has the potential, but does she have the confidence to really see it? So you really need that network of people telling them, hey, you can do it. I mean, you might not believe it, but you can. And look at this one, or look at me, or look at, whatever. So having those role models, and sometimes someone just needs a push, not necessarily everyone has the confidence, because again, it becomes very cultural, what you were told when you were a child, and. So I think those are some of the things that can successfully add to helping women.
Wow, great. The two things I got from there is the role models and supporting system from the people around to make sure that people can cherish and glow in their own ways, and especially women as a role model. Thank you. So I'll hand the floor to Toyin. If you have anything to add on to what Priya said earlier.
Yeah, so I think I agree with what Priya said, and I still sort of want to allude to what I shared at the beginning of really the importance of diagnosing your problem, right? And I'll give an example of when I joined Visa. When I joined Visa, when I looked at the number, of course, it's important to use data. So I looked at the numbers, I saw, across the Asia Pacific region, Visa is at par, 54% women across the region. It's a great place to stop and celebrate, but then also it's also very easy for everyone to say we've done a great job. Let's move our priorities somewhere else. But what I really did was then started to look at, if we double click on that, right? Do we see that representation across various levels in the organization? And as I started looking across various levels of the organization, I realized that when you get to sort of the more senior roles from director and above, that number starts to dip all the way through the executive levels, right? And of course we realized, okay, there's an issue there. It's not an attraction problem because we hire at 50-50. It's not a development or promotion problem because we are promoting equitably. I think it was at 55% the year that I looked at it, right? I was like, where is the problem? The problem was that leaky pipeline, right? You're seeing that women are leaving at a particular point in their career, and then of course looking at what are the reasons. So there you start using data, look at exit interviews, have focus groups, start discussing with people, what are the reasons that women are leaving at a particular point in their career? When I did that, I found out that there were two particular reasons. One of them was just simply caring needs, right? We're in Asia Pacific, and we know that the bulk of the caring needs in this region falls on women, whether it's caring for little children or caring for, grown adult parents. Sorry, the motion sensors here. I've turned off the lights. Or whether it's caring for, for elderly parents, it still falls on women. So how then do we create, the question for us became, how do we create a workplace that allows women to have that flexibility that they need throughout their career? Whether it is to, go maybe shift to part-time or shift to sort of another sort of working mode, or be able to even exit if they have to exit at a particular time, but being able to come back when they are ready to come back. How do we frame what a career trajectory looks like. Does it always have to look up? Does they have to look one way for everybody? So those are some of the key things that we started answering. And recently we just launched our returnship program, where we brought in women in India that had worked previously in the tech sector. They took a break and they're now ready to restart their careers. And it's amazing the quality of talent that we were able to get. Women that have had very successful careers previously. And so for us, it became eye-opening, because we were like, wow, we're missing an entire talent pool by focusing purely on women that have stayed in their careers throughout. So that's a perfect example from diagnosing your problem and then really implementing solutions to address your particular issue.
Wow, that's great. That's great. I'm so happy to hear this, because most of the time I think majority of us is looking at people who stay in the career, but not someone that already left and come back, that bring maybe a whole new perspective to the career itself, and can support the growth of the organization. Thank you, and I'd like to hand the floor to Sudesh for your input on these questions.
I think both of them said something very nice, and I like what Priya said. Sometimes being in this region, so what our parents told us to do so. And being a minority, whether you're female or of a different shade of brown like we have, our parents have told us to put your head down. Our parents have told us to stay quiet, listen, do as you're told, don't step up, just go with the flow. And are we supposed to blame our parents? Because that's what they were taught. And it's just trickled down, it's cultural. You're not supposed to speak up and stand up. And in the corporate workspace now, we are encouraging our people to stand up, speak up, be that leader, be that person. But if you were told by your parents to be quiet, so how are you going to stand up and speak up? So there's a bit of a conundrum. Then this is where something very important comes in. So on top of the mentorship and coaching, we need sponsorship. We need people who can sponsor minority individuals or diverse individuals at the table during conversations that it requires promotions or bonus time. In those benchmarking conversations where you have in the room, when we have those lists of names on the screen, you need somebody to speak up of an individual who's normally seen hidden. They do the job. They are there, they are diverse, but nobody speaks up about them. So more often than not, you will see situations where you will see leaders who say, oh, I'm so sorry, I don't know this person. Let's move on. Oh, what do you think about this person? Oh, I don't know this person. This person seems very quiet. So you see where this is coming from. I think we need to look at opportunities of sponsorship. So we have rolled out a very interesting sponsorship program across the region at all levels. And we just 2 weeks ago launched a very specific program to build future talent pipelines at the manager level. We often focus at the top tier, women at leadership, but you need to have a pipeline to fill that. And if you don't look at the pipeline below, because like what Priya mentioned earlier, people start off at a very associate junior level. You need to help them move up throughout the career. And many a times we actually look at organizations focusing only at the top. We want to build this leadership pipeline, this leadership group, but nothing is happening at the bottom. So with this program we have rolled out at manager level only, building the future pipeline of talent from diverse categories of women and other forms of diversity, where they are assigned to a sponsor, and the sponsor is given the responsibility within the next 9 to 12 months to ensure the person or the sponsee achieves 3 things: a promotion, a lateral move, or mobility to across the markets. So now the sponsor has a KPI to meet to ensure the person that they are sponsoring achieves one of those 3 through a program that we are rolling out. There's workshops and guidance, and coaching, and more dedicated conversations. In fact, the 40, 50 individuals that we have picked were picked very scientifically throughout based on their tenure, their performance appraisal, their backgrounds, their skills, and key factor is their diversity. And we have now started 1 month plus now, hoping to see what happens around the April-March timeline of next year. Are they ready to take on the next step? Because this will be a test case, right? If it works, then we can roll it out globally. I think you just have to take that chance to do that sponsorship of an individual. It looks good not only on the sponsee, but also on the sponsor who takes the responsibility.
We would love to hear more from you in the next update, Sudesh, on this program. It's actually something that really good for us to hear and to take on if that's very successful. But come back to Cambodian context. I've seen that all the three panelists are very successful in what you're implementing in your organization in terms of your gender inclusion and also diversity. But as a person that coming from Cambodia myself, I still see that there are still many organizations who still just started to take on this work. So I would love to hear more about your advice and your from your expertise. How can these organizations should start, maybe step by step, since they don't really have any much of the inclusion program in their organization yet. So any panelists can take on these questions. Maybe I think I would start from Toyin, because the first two questions are on the others. So yeah.
Sure. I think first of all, it's just sort of asking the question, like who's not represented here? Whose voice are we not hearing, right? Who's missing in this organization? And really making sure that, first of all, looking at your policies, looking at your current existing processes to make sure that it's not unintentionally excluding a particular group. And so once you've had a look at that, and then you know that your policies, your processes are not biased in any way, I think it's then important to understand, okay, so where's the next step? How do we want to target this specific group, right? And like I shared before, if you have, let's say, a attraction problem or a retention problem, I'm currently actually right now sitting in INSEAD with a group of 49 of our senior managers, our first level managers, right? They're having a program here at INSEAD because we have intentionally realized that we need to continue to develop our pipeline of future leaders, right? And then when we had a chance to speak to them, you find that a lot of them, they've progressed in their careers, but they're now at a level where we're asking them to think more strategically and more broadly about the role that they play in the organization, right? But it's important for us to create that time to take them out of the workplace to really start to do that and think more broadly about their career. This was in response to what we were hearing. So really having your ears on the ground. My role covers 18 different countries, right? So what I do is I have a network of inclusion and diversity champions in every single one of those countries that I tell them they're my eyes and ears on the ground. And I talk to them, I connect with them, very frequently. I bring them all together so that we can start to understand what are the synergies, what are the stories, where are the areas that we can then form a cohesive strategy to address those issues. And this initiative was one of them that came out of that. So really, I say start by listening, right? Start by having conversations. It's very easy sometimes to focus on particular markets when you're looking at your inclusion and diversity strategy across a region. But when you really start to listen and bring people together, you start to see certain themes and commonalities where you can then have initiatives that cover several different countries, and then you start to build momentum on top of that.
Right, that's great. Thank you. Priya, would you like to add on this point?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with what Toyin has just said, So I think one important aspect is to measure, So to get a starting point, of course, you need to listen and you need to have some kind of a pulse of what groups are not currently represented. But another thing is to also measure, if we are talking about gender, start with where are you right now and where do you want to be and why do you want to get there? So, just again, around what Toyin earlier said, building a business case and getting that buy-in from everybody so that everyone's on board that this is the direction that the company wants to go forward with, because unless you don't have that buy-in, you're likely to have resistance and even if you do achieve the numbers, it'll likely not have the result that you want, which is a very harmonious environment, which is, getting different perspectives, which is getting the best innovative ideas, which is, because today we have a very diverse group of customers as well. If I talk about hotels, it is important to have the right representation and diversity because your stakeholders are diverse as well. Your customers are diverse, your guests are diverse, your suppliers are diverse, the students that come and train with you are diverse, the colleges who you want to build relationships have a diverse population. So kind of understanding and making sure that slowly we are getting that culture piece in the organization right, so that everyone slowly comes on board. And that comes also with a lot of training programs. So one of the things, I've rejoined Marriott after 7 years, and one of the things that I've noticed is there are so many training programs that are part of your first 90-day orientation to kind of get you on board with what our vision is with regards to DEI. There's a separate section around DEI that are trainings of how you can feel belonged and how you can make someone else feel belonged. And it talks about, with a lot of pride about the gender diversity that we have, etc. And where do we want to be? So I think one really important aspect is to have that goal and to measure it. And that goal cannot be short term. That goal also has to be long term. And like Sudesh said earlier, it has to be at every level. If in 2025, I aim at being, let's say, I want to have 30% of my general managers in this market as women, at least 30%, which is not a very large percentage, but you cannot have a goal like 50% if today you only have, let's say, 12% female general managers. So I think assessing where you are right now and then taking those small steps to reach where you want to be, maybe in 2025 or 2026, whatever that time frame might look like, and then discuss it every month. Because in the normal operations, you have 100 other things to worry about. What is my market share? What is my revenue looking like? What am I giving back to the owners? So many things. But can we mark that half an hour every month wherein we look at our goals and we discuss this as well, and celebrate those wins, like Toyin said, celebrate those wins. Oh, we are up by 1%, or we are up by 3%, or we are down by 1%. And why are we down? What was the reason that we went down? How can we address it? Or if we went up, or let's say another region went up, what were the reasons? What can I learn? What are the best practices? So I think measuring is key, in my opinion.
Wow. I'm hearing many things, and I think the starting point that I'm hearing now is more of identify the issue and problems, what Toyin also mentioned as well, and then training, get people to understand what it is, and also along the way set a long-term journey, set a long-term goal, and then follow up as an action. And for this, I would love to hear from Sudesh as well. Is there anything you would love to add on to the other two panelists' point above?
Wonderfully said, both Toyin and Priya. So there's two main things, right? So the world is facing two main issues now. We have a talent crunch. It is very hard to find people now. We are all HR people over here, Toyin and Priya ourselves. We struggle to find talent because talent these days are very selective. They're very selective on who they want to work for. Not only to look at the brand, they do research, they go on Glassdoor, they speak to your friends and family, and they only join you if they feel that you are the right and safe, psychologically safe place for them. So if you don't have that psychologically safe place, talent don't bother coming. The talent who are also missing out are not only those who look like you, talk like you, but who are also allies for diverse communities. So if your company doesn't have that diverse background, even a person who is seen as majority may not also want to join because they are an ally themselves. So that is one problem, attracting the right talent. So we need to shift our gear to finding talent where talent are. So there are a lot of hidden talent in minority communities, people with disabilities, women, minority communities, people from different sexual orientations. There's a lot, but we're just not looking there, and you will miss out. So Cambodia has the opportunity to now shift the lens to look at talent from different places, and not just Cambodia, across the region as well. So that is talent. So we need to go where talent are and attract talent differently so that they come to you. Second, it is a business imperative. You can't control who's getting your credit cards. You can't control who's coming and staying in your hotels. You can put a sign out there in the hotel, I don't welcome you. But would you want to do that? You cannot. You welcome anybody to come to the hotels. You welcome anyone to buy your insurance products. So if you welcome everyone, you also need to be diverse yourselves because you are a reflection of what you sell. So people are actually watching you. If they see you in the brand that they are buying from, they feel connected. Okay, if you are working there, it is safe to buy from you. If you are there, it is safe for me to buy from you. If a woman is leading that Visa portfolio, I think it's great to have a Visa card, because she would understand me. So we keep this in mind because we are all customers. All of us here are customers. Yes. We look at the brand. We look at what you sell. We look at your values. So that's business imperative from a customer standpoint. Next is from an ESG reporting standpoint. It is becoming a need. All these investors and reporting, your Moody's and all the ESG and the ESG reports that you put out, it's a very clear scoring mechanism for diversity now. So it's become a business imperative because investors are looking at it. How diverse is your population? What are your plans you're doing to provide financial inclusivity? What are you doing to ensure sustainability of your social economic standpoint of your brand? So this is where you get your points. So it's not just about environment and climate anymore. It is about social and economic change that you're providing for the communities. So your business needs it, your investor needs it, your talent is where you need to go and find the talent. If you still don't do it, it's become a bit of a silly. A lot of brands are failing out because they are not looking at these three things. And they are being left behind, where some other brands are moving fast forward. So it's your choice of where you want to be. You want to be on the fast lane, or you want to tag along on the side.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the three panelists. And Sudesh, I learned a lot from all the three panelists. But since the time is up, and I think it's good for us to hand the floor to the audience as well, to ask the panelists the questions. If you have anything, please drop the questions. Okay, but if not, I think I might proceed with some other question to our panelists. I do enjoy and would love to hear more from your experience, and I've learned a lot. Even as a moderator today, I've learned the different perspective, and especially from different market as well. I would love to hear a bit more from our panelists in terms of the performance of women inclusion, gender inclusion in Asia Pacific in comparison to other areas around the globe as well. If you could share us the insight on that area. For this, any panelist can take on the question.
I'm happy to start if you don't mind. So honestly, I think in Asia, we do a lot better. Societal-wise, in terms of how we are from a culture, we are more accepting from the different genders. So it is just that it's how it's been for hundreds of years, from a gender balance standpoint. So that's why we do a lot better than the West or even Europe in terms of women in leadership. So which is a great thing to do. You just have to continue. But what we need to do more is start thinking about this keyword called intersectionality. So women, just looking at women in a single lens is not sufficient. You need to look from all the other forms of diversity. So because it is quite challenging, for example, if you say from how do you define a woman who may be of an ethnic minority background, who might have a disability and might have a different sexual orientation. So for this woman, who does she belong to? Which group does she identify herself with? If she says that she's a woman and from a gender standpoint, does that mean she is neglecting that she is disabled? Or she's neglecting that she's of a different sexual orientation? It becomes of a conundrum at the same time. So we have to put that different lens of diversity. So it is no longer about who you belong to, it is about overall. You have to keep doing this until everyone has a sense of belonging and they have that opportunity to come to the office and be themselves. When they are themselves, they can be highly productive, highly creative, make your brand look wonderful. So I think it's that a lot of us DEI professionals are shifting focus on not doing single lane anymore. We are opening it to cover intersectionality because we are all different, we are all diverse. I think it's just a different mindset, different way of maturity. Asia is a bit more advanced and quicker in adopting DEI now, I'm seeing, as compared to the West, which is really nice to see. It is no longer a fad. It is something that is important and is a must-do.
Yeah. I'm happy to hear that. I would love to hear more from Toyin and Priya as well on your perspective on this area.
Perfect. Yeah, so I've had experience working in inclusion and diversity at a global level. And then it was specifically my desire to do inclusion and diversity at a regional level, and it's such a diverse and robust region as Asia Pacific, right? What I found is that the West has been a little bit more, historically, a little bit more reactive to issues that come up with inclusion and diversity, and I'm seeing a very unique proactiveness in this part of the world. That's very exciting. And similar to what Sudesh had mentioned as well, when you look at intersectionality, like we're inherently diverse in this region. And that's one of the reasons why, if you look at my title, I have the word inclusion before diversity, because I really feel that inclusion is what is more important in this part of the world, right? Because we inherently have diversity in the room. I mentioned, I'm here with a group of 49 women that are from different parts of Asia Pacific for a course, and there's no two women that are the same. Right, so really to get that bonus of diversity, it's really important to make sure that you are inclusive, that every leader understands what inclusion is within their team, within their particular country, within the region, and really make sure that they are creating opportunities for every single person to feel empowered. And in focusing on inclusion, one of the things I really enjoy, and it's been a really great joy for me in my role, is zooming out and telling people that inclusion and diversity is a way to make sure that every single person gets included. Every single person gets empowered, feels empowered, and can contribute and feel like they're adding value to the organization. And it's the same concept with intersectionality, and really letting people know that there are just different parts of us that make us different. I'm sure between myself and Priya, if we started having a conversation, we'll realize that there are some differences, right? But really understanding how can we create an environment that regardless of your neurodiversity, your personality type, are you an introvert or an extrovert? Are you, what religious background you have, what socioeconomic class you came from, what kind of education you had? How can we create an environment that everybody can thrive? That is the unique thing that we are solving in Asia Pacific that I can't say for sure that many other regions are doing at this point. And I think that once we crack this, it will be a benefit and something that we can export to other parts of the world.
Thank you. Priya, do you have anything to add on?
I'm really happy to hear what Sudesh and Toyin just said, because unlike them, I don't have that whole global information for Marriott. So in advance of this panel discussion, I reached out to someone that looks after diversity and inclusion and would have all of the information to understand how we are doing in APEC compared to the other regions. Now, if I talk about my region, which is TBCN, from a representation piece, we are doing really well. Nearly 50% of my workforce here is females, and I'm only talking about gender representation at the moment. But when we talk about women in leadership or diversity in leadership, I think we still have a long way to go. And when I talk about diversity, I talk about women representation in general managers. And because in this region, senior leadership, we see a lot of expats. So the representation of the local general managers, I think there's a lot of work to be done. So I was asking, the senior director for diversity compared to other regions. What I was told was the Americas are doing better than us when we talk about APEC, but we are doing better than MEA, which is Middle East and Africa. So I think one of the reasons for that is, and I feel very passionate about it, is yes, there is equality and we have, guarantee of fair treatment and all of those things, but one really important factor to consider in an industry like hotel industry, where a very high percentage of your workforce are, they're high on manual labor. They're customer facing. They're not very senior. They're more of the junior level staff. Very passionate about equity, because it's well and good to say all opportunities are available for everyone, regardless of your gender. But the fact is that the playing field has never been leveled. Women didn't start at the same place where maybe their male counterparts did. And culturally, the expectations, in my humble opinion, from a woman are much higher, in the sense that when you might make the same amount of money as your husband, but when you go back home in Asia, you're still the primary caregiver of your children. You're still expected to ensure that there's good food at the table. If there's a problem with the parents and in-laws, you're supposed to also do your bit there. And not necessary in every household your spouse will give you the same support or say, hey, let's do 50-50, I'll do the dishes and you make the beds. It doesn't happen. So in this part of the world, I think there is that expectation to really be a superwoman. So until and unless at the workplace we provide our female associates those opportunities, something like, let's say, childcare, or having a baby room at the hotel where a new mother can bring their child, or policies that include all of these situations so that they can still work. As an industry, because we are customer facing and we are a service industry, most of the roles cannot be remote, but there are roles that can be done flexibly. How do we look more at that? How can we include in our recruitment process, like Sudesh said, widen the net. There's a population that's retired, maybe at 55. In Thailand, you retire at 55. Can you engage them for 4 hours, for your call center kind of a job? How about housewives? Are there tasks that they can do? So there are so many different ways, but I think it's all well and good to have targets and the intention to have a more diverse, inclusive crowd, but if it comes without equity, I'm not sure it will really be successful, And I'm being more industry specific, wherein we don't get, our associates are not the most highly educated. You could just be a high school, and you could start, you could start at a hotel and work your way through. So you could be a single mother, you could be, divorced. So you're carrying that load in this society, and still you have all of those expectations. So how do we make it more inclusive, and how do we support them so that they can take on bigger roles and be leaders? So we have a 50-50 representation overall of females, but if I look at the leadership representation, it's much, much lesser. So I think that there's a big space there.
Thank you for all the 3 panelists who share about their the status of Asia Pacific performance in comparison to other regions. And quite happy that we are good, but there's a lot more that we need to do. So one thing that I really appreciate is, Priya, you mentioned about equity. That is something that I think that's something that we need to look beyond just equality, but what are the things that we can build in order to make sure that everyone have the resources to be equal to the rest of the people, because not everyone coming from the same background or the same status to achieve on the same level. So I think this is just my last question to all the panelists. We've been talking a lot about what to do and what should we do and what we have done, but I would love to hear more about challenges as well, because this part we haven't touched on, and I would love to invite Toyin to share more first, and then followed by the other 2 panelists regarding to the challenges that you face when you are trying to implement the inclusion and equality program in your industries.
Yeah. So no, thank you so much. I think at the onset, what I found is that the first challenge is getting buy-in. And really, like I've mentioned, it's really important to have conversations to create a psychologically safe space for people to share with you what their concerns are. I know there's a question in the chat about people with disabilities, so I'm going to use that example. When I joined Visa, one of the areas I started looking at, I know that gender is a very common area across the region. It's easier to measure, so oftentimes that's where we go to. And I started looking at some other areas like, people with disabilities, and I started asking, sort of around the room, do we have people with disabilities? Have we made this very intentional? And when I looked around the room, I couldn't see a lot of people with physical disabilities that I could see. And so one of the things I said was, okay, let's create a safe space for, people to come together around this topic. And so we opened up a working group, and I invited people. I said, we know that we need to be more inclusive of people with disabilities, because the very mere fact that I don't see a lot of people around with physical disabilities signals something to me. And we opened that up. We had very instantly about 40 employees that came together. A lot of them were people with disabilities themselves, and we started talking about how we could become more inclusive of people with disabilities. And very quickly, after that, we were able to start hiring more and more people with disabilities, signaling that we are an inclusive employer. And then we started getting the recognition, right? But when I created a safe space, I had some hiring managers saying, these are my concerns. I've had a person with a disability apply for this role before, but these are my concerns. Sometimes they're as simple as, I know during the pandemic when we were all wearing masks, they said, well, I had somebody who was who had a hearing impairment and had to read lips. Well, we all have to wear masks. So then what do we do? Right? And so you start really creating that space where they're telling you what the concerns are, and then you can systematically work with everybody to overcome those barriers. We've started having interns that are people with disabilities, that are neurodiverse, and we've seen a lot of progress because they've helped us along the journey. So it's really creating that buy-in, finding ways to demonstrate impact at the onset, I think really overcomes that challenge so that people can then come along with you. And then I would say the other challenge is really the people that will say, well, what about me, right? You're focusing so much on a particular group, but what about me? And what we've done to overcome that challenge is really to step back and look at inclusion more holistically, right? And I often do this by using this it's called the wheel of privilege and power, where it kind of breaks out all different aspects of a person's identity, upbringing, background. It includes religion, it includes social class, it includes everything. And I often will show people and I say, look, there's some areas that you are privileged. If you look around this, there must be some area where you have privilege over somebody that might not have had the privilege that you have. And so I'm using this as an opportunity to invite you to this conversation, to invite you to the table on how we get more inclusive as an organization. And I find that often helps with the people that are, looking on the side and saying, well, this excludes me. And then maybe if I were to say one finally that, oftentimes is a challenge, is really making sure that you're sustaining that momentum, especially when, for example, you've gotten to gender parity or you've started hiring people with disabilities. How do you keep the momentum? And really it's important to have clear ways that you're measuring progress and the outcomes of that progress. So whether it's little things, by getting your people with disabilities together and you say, hey, let's work on this project that will develop business impact for the organization. And then once that happens, then you are then communicating and celebrating that we now have a new feature of our product that was developed by our employee resource group for people with disabilities. Then everybody else starts to think, okay, we are actually getting business value from this, and it helps you to build momentum. And so that's one thing that I often mention is that once you've started making good progress, please always make it a point to continue to communicate and build energy around the progress you're making.
Thank you. The other two panelists, could you briefly answer this question? Because the time is here already. I would love to hear more, but since the time is not allowed, so please kindly make it short.
So, some of the challenges, just to, give you a different perspective, because probably hotel industry is a little different when it comes to the level of education and historically how it's been. Some of the key challenges that we face with regards to gender inclusion and women is sexist language or humor. So if you're standing in a kitchen or F&B, because most of the people, your employees are quite young, not very well educated. So a lot of assumptions based on gender, many cases of harassment, it could be from the manager, it could be amongst the associates, the nature of the business, long working hours, lack of flexible scheduling. Regardless of your gender, you are required to do night shifts or evening shifts, especially when you have a 50% representation. So culturally, there are a lot of challenges. And when we talk about the leadership level, sometimes, so when I'm talking about a general manager, you also need a buy-in from the owner of the hotel, because we are a hotel management company, Marriott is. So, sometimes the mentality of the owner might be, hey, no, I'm looking I'm looking for a man, I'm looking for a male, or I'm looking for a certain, a person from a certain country, a male from a certain country in this age group that should be the general manager. So there are those biases as well. And what can we do in our, control to kind of help remove these biases or work with this is, we still keep putting forward those candidates. We still keep trying. We still keep educating the leaders. We still keep sharing success stories of, diverse groups of people that have been successful with our ownership companies, Again, have resource groups, have those allies, and keep pushing forward, keep trying, and keep sharing more and more. And then little by little, you can bridge the gap. And I think one thing also to address this whole harassment piece is for giving all the associates that comfort that their voices can be heard. So we have an employee relations line. If anybody has an issue, they can absolutely anonymously call that line, apart from the resources available in the hotel, which is HR and general manager. But if they're not comfortable, they can call the GFT line. We have a separate associate relations team, which is absolutely an independent, which can look at any complaints that are escalated so that, there's no conflict of interest. We have very proactive trainings related to workplace harassment, sexual harassment, so that everyone's on the same page, because culturally, again, I might think something is acceptable, you might think it's not, So having those training programs repeatedly, making sure that you have to do them once every year so that you're reminded of what the expectations are from the company in terms of behavior. And in the end, having a workplace that welcomes all and respects all. So that continuous endeavor to get to a place where you feel belonged, So, and regardless of whether you're a man, woman, whatever age, you feel like this is your home. I think that is where we want to get to. And when we get there, it'll be inclusive for everyone, So that's what we aim for in Marriott.
Thank you. Sudesh?
Everyone has said everything wonderful. I think it's just one little word. There's always been something called the fear. The challenge is the fear of the unknown. When you don't know, you're really afraid. And what you do when you're afraid, you put a wall in front of you and you push everything away. And that's what happens to be most managers when you're not aware and you're afraid of hiring a diverse person or managing a diverse person or doing this, what about me, and all that. We just have to give the majority that comfort that it's okay to be afraid, because we are also afraid. We minority groups are also very afraid. So let's be afraid together and to see if we can take that fear out. So it's just, the word fear will always be there. So it's just, don't be afraid.
Thank you so much for the valuable times from our panelists. We really thank you for your participation and sharing us the insightful and meaningful conversation today. And I would like to hand the floor to Ms. May In for a closing remark for today's webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Cyril, and thank you for the panelists. There's one common thing coming through from all the discussions we had this morning, that a company that can tap into the potentials and the innovations of their female talents will have a real commercial edge. So I encourage everyone, regardless of what function you are in your company and in your organization or even in school, to play a part in driving diversity. Because at the end of the day, what is good for women is good for the society and for the company overall. Thank you.